Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, December the 22nd, 2019. It is currently 3:55 p.m. Central Time. Now, I do not have a lot of time for this episode. However, I'm going to try to give you some very important information, and I want to offer a word of warning here. We have one of those stories that sometimes will show up. It seems like, oh no, that cannot be true. He couldn't have said that. And then we find out later, well, he didn't exactly say it that way. It's being misrepresented by the news media. And so then you have to come back and try to correct it or offer some context to the statements. This is a situation where we have comments made by Pope Francis that seem to be saying something that most Christians are going to be like, no way, that's wrong. And it could be, again, a situation where later we find out, well, that's not exactly how he meant it. So we're going to have to look at this carefully. I'm going to give you the information. We'll have to do additional research. I am going to try to get some Catholic perspective on these comments, find out if I'm not misrepresenting them. We want to be fair. We want to be accurate. But let me say this, it does appear to be a little bit disturbing. And we're going to have to definitely look and see what exactly was stated and exactly what has happened. This article was posted December the 22nd, 2019 at 1:53 p.m., so just a couple of hours ago. And so I wish, in some ways, I wish I could find this being reported in a number of locations to determine the accuracy of this. But I'm going to go ahead and just put this out there, and then we will see what we can discover. But right now, listen to this skeptically and realize that when you're done, you need to do additional research. And then we'll see if we can return to this this coming week and really dig into this and see what's going on. All right. Here is the headline. Pope says Christians should never seek to convert unbelievers. Anyone who proselytizes is not a disciple of Jesus. Whoa, those are some serious words, right? Pope says Christians should never seek to convert unbelievers. Anyone who proselytizes is not a disciple of Jesus. Now, the Christian faith has always been built on this fact that Christianity is true, that salvation cannot be found in any other person other than Jesus Christ. No one comes to the Father but by Christ. So our job is to go and to teach, to seek to convert, to seek to bring them to faith in Jesus Christ. In a sense, to proselytize, using that term. In other words, it doesn't matter what faith you are. If you're not a Christian, you don't have the truth. You need Christianity. You need Christ. And for him to say that anyone who does that is not a disciple of Jesus seems to be absolutely contrary to the Great Commission to go forth and make disciples, teaching, baptizing, teaching to obey. This seems very contradictory to that. So that's why I'm a little bit skeptical, but let's see at least how this story reports it. In a dialogue with Catholic high school students in Rome this weekend, Pope Francis responded to a question about how to deal with atheists and people of other faiths by saying that Christians should never proselytize, and any who do are not truly Christians. The Pope's lengthy answer, reprinted in full at the bottom of this article, contained numerous notable remarks illustrating the Pope's views on evangelism, including, now here are some quotes from his answer. Speaking of having Jewish and Muslim friends, I quote, "We are all the same, all children of God," unquote. A new quote, "It did occur to me, and it doesn't have to be like saying to a boy or a girl, you are Jewish or you're a Muslim, come, be converted. We are not in the time of the Crusades. In front of an unbeliever, the last thing I have to do is to try to convince him. Never. But listen, never bring the gospel by proselytizing. If someone says they are a disciple of Jesus and comes to you with proselytism, they are not a disciple of Jesus. The church does not grow by proselytism." Now, those are some things. Here, his full answer is here. It's a couple of paragraphs. I'll read There's a lot here. I don't know if I'm going to have time to read all of this. Let me just look at this really quick. He goes, let's go to you first. When I taught what a look and what words I had towards believing children of other religions. But in Argentina, there's a social phenomenon. And then he goes on. I'm the son of a migrant, and this has made a culture of coexistence. I went to public school, and we always had compassion from other religions. We were educated to coexist. There is a Jew, a Russian. Come. I'm a friend of Russian. They said Russian because the majority of the Jews came from, and then he named some places. All Turkish, come. This was Muslim. This was Jewish. We all played football together. We're all friends. Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with obviously coexisting. We do have to get along. This has taught me so much that we are all the same, all children of God. Now, what do you mean by all children of God? All children of God because we are all created by God, or all sons of God because we become sons of God by being adopted by salvation? That's a basic Christian teaching. He goes, and this purifies your gaze. It makes you human. In Argentina, there is a small group of closed-minded Catholics who do not want Jews, do not want Muslims, but this group, I have never liked it, is a group that is on the fringe. They have a cultural magazine, but they do not have impact in society. This is the secret. You must be consistent with your faith. It didn't occur to me, and it doesn't have to be like saying to a boy or a girl, you're a Jewish, you're a Muslim, come be converted. So I guess you shouldn't tell the Muslim or the Jew to be converted. You be consistent with your faith, and that consistency is what will make you mature. We are not in the times of the Crusades. It is a bad thing, but it made me suffer so much. A step of, and then he uses, it looks like a Latin phrase there. When the Christians, the Crusaders, had conquered the Muslims, and then a line of all the Muslims were queued, and the priest was in front of it, and a soldier, the priest in front of the baptismal font, and everyone came and read the passage. He asked, either the baptism or the sword. Yes, okay, this is a famous thing that is talked about in the Crusades. All right, well, I don't think anyone is calling someone to be converted is not the same thing as the Crusades. Even comparing that is insane. When I try to convert someone to Christianity, I'm not giving them the threat of death. So, all right, he says this happened in history. They also do it with us Christians in other parts. They are also doing it, but what we did was shameful because it is a story of forced conversion, of not respecting the dignity of the person. This is why my experience was natural with people of other religions, because my dad's job was an accountant, and he had so many Jewish business clients, and they came home. It was normal, and I didn't have this as a problem. But it must be normal. Nothing to leave them aside because they have another faith. The first is all. In front of an unbeliever, the last thing I have to do is to try to convince him. Never. The last thing I have to do is speak. I have to live consistent with my faith, and it will be my testimony to awaken the curiosity of the others who say, but why do you do this? And yes, I can speak then, but listen, never bring the gospel by proselytizing. If someone says they are a disciple of Jesus and comes to you with proselytism, they are not a disciple of Jesus. Proselytism is not done. The church does not grow by proselytism. Pope Benedict has said it grows by attraction, by testimony. Football teams proselytize. This can be done. Political parties can be done there. But with faith, there is no proselytism. And if someone says to me, but why? Read the gospel. This is my faith, but without pressure. Okay, if you kind of put it in those broader contexts, maybe I see what he's trying to say. Yes, we don't want to force people. Yes, we don't want to do that. No, we don't want to. I guess what it comes down to is, how do you define proselytism? How do you define proselytize? How do you define that? In fact, let me do something real quick here live on the air. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to look up the definition. Proselytize, definition. Proselytize, convert or attempt to convert someone from one religion, belief, or opinion to another. You're trying to convert them. Isn't that what we're supposed to go and preach the gospel, calling people to repentance and to faith? Is that not fit the definition of proselytize? He's like, what he's basically saying is, hey, you don't ever speak. You just live your life. And then when they ask, then you speak. If they don't ask, you don't speak. You don't try to convert. You don't try to challenge. Well, wait a minute. Are you telling me then they're going to go to heaven? Are you telling me that they're going to be okay? Because the Christianity seems to teach if they don't come to faith in Christ, they will suffer an eternity in hell. Shouldn't you therefore then seek? Now, I'm not saying you should do it by force. I'm not saying you should do it by harassment. I'm not saying you should do something to try to bother someone, but you not look for opportunities to engage them in spiritual conversation, to demonstrate to them that they need faith in Christ? Because without it, what's the consequence? It seems like he's more concerned about, I don't know. This is an interesting take. Now, in the news article, they have a video that comes from a Catholic news service. Now, this is a Catholic news service. I thought this was interesting. From, I guess, last year when Pope Francis was asked a question. And I'm going to play the audio of that video for you right now because it goes to the same situation. Let's listen to it together.
At a poor parish on the forgotten outskirts of Rome, April 15th, Pope Francis began by answering questions from some of the youngest parishioners, including a boy named Emanuele.
Dai.
Non ce la faccio.
Vieni da me, Emanuele. Vieni da me e dimmi all'orecchio. Vieni da me. Vieni.
Now, obviously, unless you know what was being said, you don't understand it. But I wanted you to hear it just because I want you to actually hear the audio of it. That it's an actual video. You can if you need the link, I can show you the video itself where you can read everything that's being said. But here's what happens: a little boy comes up and he asks the Pope if his late father was in heaven, despite the fact that he was an atheist. But Pope Francis basically tells the boy that his father is in heaven, even though he is an atheist, because he had his children baptized. Now, and you can watch where that music is. They have the words of the Pope speaking and giving the lengthy answer, but that's basically what he is saying. Well, that created a little bit of controversy. Now, to be fair, I want to be fair here. I want to be fair as I can be here. And that situation, you're in a bad situation, right? If you got a grieving child, the last thing you want to do is just start dropping on the child, hey, your father is not in heaven. So I don't know what you do there, but I know the last thing you don't want to do, you don't want to give them false assurance. You want to offer some kind of comfort. And again, placing the kids there to ask these questions, you got to think about when kids ask questions, do you want to set up a public situation where a kid's going to ask a question in public that could put you in a very bad situation? You have to be wise there. What I would do is just try to comfort the child. What I would do is not try to offer any false assurance. But Christianity, we just have to be honest, doesn't always have comforting answers. Christianity has the reality of heaven and the reality of hell. And you can't just compromise your answer in a very uncomfortable situation. Now, you may want to divert. It's a child. You may want to say, I'm not going to really answer the question and just try to add some comfort and something along those lines. But to assure him that he's in heaven because he baptized his children that's contrary to Catholic theology. Catholic theology can't really assure anyone who is in heaven, because unless a person dies in a state of grace, well, if they die in a state of grace, they only get to purgatory. Then they get from purgatory to heaven. So I don't even know how the Pope could assure that anyone is in heaven, because he'd have to know if the person died in a state of grace. Well, if they're an atheist, they didn't die in a state of grace. So how do you say they're in heaven? Did he just declare the person to be a saint? That doesn't seem to even be consistent with Catholic theology, much less biblical theology. But that video, and again, I just played it because I wanted you to just hear it, just to know that it exists. I mean, it would be better if it was in English, but you get the idea that the Pope has said things. The main thing I want you to get is the Pope has made a lot of these kinds of statements, and every time they come back and say, well, he didn't mean it that way. That was taken out of context. He didn't mean that. And then everyone just moves on. But how many statements is he going to say before you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you just completely, listen, if we're not to convert anyone and we're not to proselytize anyone, and we're basically saying everyone's a child of God, almost inferring that everyone's going to go to heaven, then why does the church even exist? What's the proclamation of the gospel even for? I'm baffled by this. I am baffled by this. But again, I've watched too many of these stories, and then tomorrow we'll get, hey, Pope didn't really say that. Pope didn't really mean that. It's got lost in translation. That's not what he meant. That's not what he said. And I always try to acknowledge that if they tell me that's not what he said, I will try. I'm not the expert. I will go with them. But at some point, here we have his answer in writing, and I understand that he's trying to argue against proselytizing. But man, I don't know how you can he's really emphasizing like that's a negative word. But if you look up the definition, it just means seeking to convert someone of a different religion. Muslims need to be converted to Jesus Christ. Atheists need to be converted. I am perplexed. I am perplexed. And if Catholics believe me as a Protestant has a false gospel and that I'm anathema, as the Council of Trent would say, shouldn't they be seeking to convert me and proselytize me? Or do they want me to stay in a state of being anathematized? These are questions that are going to have to be answered. But I just thought I would bring this to everyone's attention. We'll have to look into it more. And it's just a very short live broadcast, and I wanted to at least let everyone know what is going on. Again, sometimes these stories become a big deal. Sometimes nothing happens, but I saw it, wanted to bring it to your attention. And we'll see. Last year, the little boy, did my dad go to heaven? He's an atheist. Well, yeah, sure. He baptized his children, I guess so. And then now this year, 2019, he's making other statements that seem to be very contradictory to I think it's even contradictory to Catholic theology and to biblical Christianity. So we'll see where this goes. It'll be interesting to watch. Sometimes you think something big is going to come from these stories and nothing ever really happens. And I'm always like, shouldn't the Pope be able to clarify these statements and make it clear and give me a clear teaching on what is believed about salvation and people of other religions and heaven and hell and who goes and who doesn't? Couldn't they articulate that in a dogmatic way? Don't they have the authority to do just that? All right, we'll stop there. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for listening. God bless.